Welcome back to another Mackem in the Middle podcast after another Sunderland game, which was played last night at the Stadium of Light with a 2-1 win over, at the time, 5th placed Plymouth, as we were in 4th. We're now up to 3rd, and I think Plymouth are possibly 6th, maybe 5th. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the table. But Dylan and Michael are going to talk about the game and a few other things, as we always end up doing with these podcasts about League One games. First thing, Michael.
The decision is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's one talking point we'll get to, which I'm sure we'll all be on the same kind of wavelength for, and I'm sure you probably know where that's going to go, but we'll get there eventually. But 3 points again, Michael. Good start of the game. Kind of tailed off a little bit towards the end, and it was easily the most nervous 20 minutes of the game from the 70th onwards, I think, of the season. But ultimately, got the 3 points. Decent performance, which we'll get into a little bit more. Good day, really.
Exactly.
A good night, I should say.
Yeah, this was certainly one of the questions I think some people had after the Morecambe game, where it's all well and good beating Morecambe, who are down near the bottom, but can you follow that up with a victory against the side that's near the top? Now, I still think Plymouth, as much as they deserve respect, have overachieved this season, and even some of the Plymouth fans talking to after the game was saying that. But at the end of the day, they're not going to care what I think. They were in the playoffs in League One. So at the end of the day, for me, that was still a game I think that at home we needed to be winning. And overall, I think the performance, certainly in the first half, and certainly the first 15, 20, 25 minutes, we were just relentless. And it wasn't just the fact we scored 2 goals, one of which was both of which were well-worked goals. The first one were well rehearsed training ground exercise by the looks of it, and then the second one was a real bit of class from Diaku and a really good finish from Broadhead. But apart from that, we had chances. I'm not even joking, guys. We literally had chances to be 3-4-0 up by half an hour, didn't we?
Probably earlier, to be fair.
Yeah, even then. So that's the point. So I kept, every time I watched after yesterday watching Plymouth, I thought we kept carving them open repeatedly, and it was just all about the high press being back. It was returning, which makes me wonder where it was during that bad run. But pressing teams and making them brick themselves and making them really nervous was what we should be, especially at home in this league, is what we should be doing. Second half, as you said, we did have spells where Plymouth came at us, but I think for the most part, apart from the couple of corners which surrounded their goal in that couple of minute spell, in general, I thought we were quite comfortable defensively. And it was just the fact that we kept winning the second balls in the second half. We just kept, for the most part, kept things simple. And Plymouth, at the end of the day, couldn't live with us. Even in the second half, we had a chance with Aidan O'Brien when their keeper misjudged the ball, and O'Brien was very unlucky not to score. And then we had that incident where the ball was agonisingly, slowly rolling towards the line, and it got cleared in the end.
Yeah.
But even so, the scoreline, I thought, personally flattered Plymouth. I think we should have won by more goals. And the fact that we've followed the Oxford game with 2 wins at home. I did say before Oxford, 7 points out of these 3. Even though we want 9 for me wasn't as entirely realistic as we'd hoped for. 7 points, you can't complain at that for me. It's a good return. And
people, rightfully so, Dylan, have criticised the atmosphere in the last few weeks and possibly months as well. Against Morecambe, there's no way of other putting it. It was shocking, the atmosphere for a team that were 4 or 5-0 up at times in the game. But the early goal, the good start we had to the game, certainly improved the atmosphere throughout the rest of the game, and possibly is one of the reasons that we have come away with 3 points as opposed to 1.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, it's fair. Everyone was getting behind him yesterday. I mean, I must say it didn't look to be as many people there as I'm used to. Obviously, I haven't been to a home game in about 3 months since moving, and then coming back, it looked empty compared to the last game I went to. But for those that were there, obviously, were singing for most of the game. It wasn't as many just anti-mag chants, which I'm sick of hearing from the South Stand. That was nice, and it was like even the people sat around me were getting vocal at times, which is very rare. Normally, anywhere not sat in the South Stand, you're silent for the entire game. But I think obviously it helped, especially when the game was getting a bit scrappy towards the end. Sort of reminded, kept the players focused, reminding them that don't need to lose their heads. And I think we really spurred them on to defend, especially after we conceded, because it was a bit rough for that last 20 minutes. I was bricking it, but thankfully they managed to keep the composure.
It's Sunderland without making you brick yourself, is it?
Oh, no, exactly. You're spot on.
Yeah. And obviously, Michael, you can't blame the atmosphere for some of the results this season or some of the performances, but it really did make a difference last night, didn't it? You know, that Sunderland have notoriously been known as a team that never win a second ball in a challenge. Very rarely win the first one either. But, you know, Winchester, Neil, everyone was winning the first ball. If they didn't win the first one, they were winning the second. And the atmosphere and the confidence wasn't just in the fans, wasn't just in the players, it was everywhere.
Exactly, and I put this on Twitter myself, and it's got quite a lot more likes than I thought it was going to actually. But but the atmosphere yesterday. I mean, I'm always one that I'm quite tired of this, that we always let's have a dig at the atmosphere. But so far this season, in patches, the atmosphere has been quite quiet, especially when we have been winning games. But yesterday, I think and a lot of it was down to the lovely, infamous referee, which I'm sure we'll get onto later. But for me, the atmosphere was electric yesterday, and I think a lot of people understood, and the players understood the magnitude of the game and the magnitude of that. There was a chance to close the gap with Wigan dropping points yesterday, Wickham dropping points as well. But I mean, and the fact and I said it in my own video, the referee, the fact of how garbage he was, I think united the fans to be the 12th man yesterday. Because it felt like, I mean, again, I'll try not to go on the referee too much to not try and steal talking.
Oh, feel free to go in as much on the referee as you want, because I certainly will be.
Well, okay. Well, I was more trying to save it for a segment later on. But okay. Well, regardless, without swearing too much, he was garbage. He was one of the worst refs I've ever seen, and that says a lot considering the officials we've had in League One. But the point is, it felt like But the point to that is, he felt like he was Plymouth's 12th man, and that's not Plymouth's fault, by the way. The referee was just very incompetent. But at the end of the day, there was a point during the game where I was like, right, screw him. If he's going to be their 12th man, we might as well be our 12th man. How many of us and how many of him is there? You know, we had 27,000 screaming us on. And the atmosphere, as you said, that was one of the best atmospheres I've seen at the Stadium of Light. And considering how much we have been winning games, the atmosphere, like we said before, has been flat. But yesterday, I thought it was electric. We got behind the players. Even when we conceded, I didn't think there was obviously nerve, but I didn't think there was many people getting on the players' backs from what I can remember.
Yeah. And obviously, it's quite easy. We will talk about referee now, because why not? You know, it was a good game, good performance, good win. So
you're very welcome.
We'll kind of get the negative out of the way and then go on to the positives like we usually do after a win. But Dylan, he was shit, wasn't he? Really, the officiator, not just the referee, the linesman, the fourth official. You know, there was one point in the game I even put on Twitter. I think he missed probably 6 to 8 blatant fouls in the space of a couple of minutes. And that led to Johnson being booked, which didn't make any sense whatsoever, because the complaints that he had were completely normal, completely acceptable, because the referee just seemed to have no control on the game at all.
Oh yeah, no. Honestly, I was convinced he'd left his whistle and his cards at home until at the end of the first half, when he eventually decided to use it.
That's the thing as well, though, wasn't it? It was just, that's another complaint people have about the referee. He's just inconsistent when the referee game. You know, he was quite happy in the first half or at certain parts of the game where he'd blow up for fouls, and then he'd stop and then he'd start again. But some of the ones he missed were so blatant. I'll always go back to that one on Dan Neil just outside the box. How he's not given that as a free kick, I have not a clue in the world.
No, I know it was absolutely atrocious. I know most weeks, because we're in League One, all the officials are shocking, and most weeks we say, oh, this and that. But I can genuinely say that since we've dropped into the third tier, that is the worst refereeing performance I've seen. Like, I had to check just to see if he was like notorious for not dishing fouls out. I looked at his record. He averages about 20 fouls a game, and I can remember him giving away about 6 all for Plymouth. But I don't know if you.
Well, there was an interesting thing that Connor Bromley put on Twitter. At one point in the game, he went 23 minutes without blowing for a foul, apparently.
That's a quarter of the game, pretty much.
Yeah. 23 minutes without blowing for a foul. And considering how many fouls there actually were in that game, that is very questionable. And there is probably, again, you know, after a win, you're probably not as bothered as much, so you kind of brush past it a little bit. But in that game, we probably had some genuine penalty claims as well, Michael.
Agreed. There's so many. Obviously, it's easy to make anything look like a penalty and just appeal for it. But regardless, we had. I've just literally looked at the chance back on the hack on Dan Neil outside the box. That should have been a free kick. And then penalties. Yeah, we had a few genuine ones which the referee seemed to ignore. I mean, to be honest, I was amazed that he didn't give Plymouth a penalty every time they ventured into the box and one of their players might have fallen over. It was absolutely atrocious, and I just don't understand this. As you mentioned earlier, the lack of consistency where sometimes in certain games, referees will deem something to be a foul, a penalty, or a free kick, whatever, and then other times the exact same challenge will go unpunished.
It's not just that as well, though. It's like, again, going back to that Dan Neil foul, different referee books him and gives the free kick. The fact that he hasn't even given a foul is just amazing for that one.
But there was so many times when, and there was a point in the second half where Plymouth were resorting to try and using dirty tactics to try and maybe not injure, but certainly try to disrupt the momentum of the game and try and stop our players and from doing what they were doing. And he wasn't giving anything. And it was a lot of times it was genuinely horrendous tackles, or it was at very best it was very physical with missing the ball. It was. I'm running out of words to say this because, as you guys know, I don't particularly like to talk about the referees, but at the same time, they are worthy of criticism as much as any player is. I never get the idea that when every time we do rubbish, someone always goes, "Oh, you can't blame the referees." Yes, you can. Yeah. Yes, you absolutely can. They're there to be criticised as much as anybody else.
I think it says a lot though as well. If you're winning a game and you're still complaining, that tells you how bad they really are.
And make no mistake, Plymouth will have found out probably in a lot of their own games this season how rubbish the officials are. That it's incredible. The fact we're still talking about this because it seems less salty, doesn't it? Because we're winning. Yeah. But there's a number of decisions that we've got over the years that have been contentious because of how bad the officials have been. As I said, it was the goal against Bradford. Sorry, the goal Bradford scored in the first season at the Stadium of Light, which was clearly over the line. Let's be honest. Yeah. And then the following season when we beat Bristol Rovers 3-0, there was a clash of heads in the build-up to our second goal. And wasn't given the play wasn't stopped, which could have been really horrendous for the player who was down injured. Yeah. There's load of atrocious decision making going on, and the FA. I think we've said this before that the officials in this league are part-time officials. They need to be. They either need to be supported or they need to get some competent officials in. Heck, I'm just looking at a match vlog as I speak, and if you look at it, there was a chat right at the very end, last kick of the game, pretty much. There was a chance where Plymouth pretty much should have had a corner and it was given as a goal kick. Now, I was happy about it, but if I was Plymouth, I'd be raging about that. So I bet you we are far from the only club or only set of fans to talk about the officials. And the sooner this gets sorted out, the better, because eventually these officials are really going to cost clubs unfairly in the long run.
Yeah. And I mean, I speak to an Ipswich fan fairly frequently and we always have a discussion about the referees and they seem to get similar standards to us in terms of decisions going against them. But anyway, away from officials, which I'm sure that'll pop up again in the future, probably on Sunday when we play Ipswich, coincidentally.
It's going to pop up. I bet it'll pop up at least half a dozen times between now and the end of the season.
I'd probably say at least a couple of times between now and Sunday, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe, to be fair.
But wouldn't be surprised if it comes back up again today, but hopefully not. We'll try and move away from that. But first goal from a corner, Dylan. Johnson said after the game, it is something that they've worked on in the training ground. McAllister is behind the kind of idea. Admittedly, I think Daniel came on and said he wasn't actually meant to receive the ball, but he did. He scored it. It's good to see something different from the corners because we've never looked like a threat from set pieces, have we?
No, we haven't. Especially when we don't like swing it in the box instead, we just play it along the floor. Like, I'll be totally honest. When he put it to Doyle at the front post, my thought was, what the hell's he done that for?
Yeah.
And then just did a little flick on and we scored. And I was like, oh my God, I hadn't even finished my sentence complaining. Scored. So I was like, that shut us up. So I thought, fair play. But I suppose if we're gonna sort of work on things like that to try and execute during the match, and it's gonna work, that's great because most of the time, especially in recent years, we've resorted to either moving it in and it getting cleared because half the players in the league are big and bulky, and none of ours really are until maybe this season with the likes of Doyle, or playing it short and then losing the ball. So but if we're going to start working on it, it's something we're intending on improving on as the season goes on. Then I can say it's maybe getting a few more goals from set pieces, which is something we need to do.
Yeah, and it is somewhat of a surprise, Michael, that it's took us this long under Johnson's kind of tenure to actually work on something like that, because we've had the players that are capable of doing, different things from a free kick or a corner or even a throw-in. Some teams work on that and it can be effective. And it was effective. Dan Neil got himself another goal in the right place at the right time. We had plenty of people in the box. And, the ability to, do set pieces like that, it's clear.
It is. We have, like you said, when we've got people like Alex Pritchard, for instance, who's starting to take good set pieces, even if he's not in the team. Elliot Embleton. It is amazing that we don't. I can't remember many times this season we've scored from set pieces, whether it be directly from a cross or through a routine like that. So it's one of those things that we probably do need to start seeing more of. Because I mean, if you look at a lot of teams in this division, one way or another, a lot of the times that they threaten is through set pieces. Granted, a lot of them is literally lump the ball into the box and have a 6'7" striker head in the back of the net. But the point is, you can still be effective from set pieces. And the amount of time, and you guys know this as well, the amount of times that we've seen teams come to the Stadium of Light and play for fouls, play for set pieces to try and be dangerous.
Yeah.
So if we can, and we have got the quality to be effective from those situations. So it's all about just trying to maintain that. I mean, obviously the routine yesterday was great. It'd be amazing to see how many times we can get away with doing that across the season. But even if that was the only time we do it, I still love that goal all the same.
Yeah. Well, it was an early goal and it wasn't too long till we made it 2-0. Dayaku involved in the build-up, got himself the assist as well. Again, we'll talk about him a little bit later on. He's beat his man, got a ball into the box for Broadhead, and I was at the other side of the stadium, so I didn't actually realise what Broadhead had done. But it was like a back heel, wasn't it? Good finish, and like we've said on a few times on here between us and Michael and John and whoever else has been on Dylan, Broadhead looks a very, very good player.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it was one thing the lads I was sitting with pointed out is we haven't had, for at least a decent amount of time, we haven't had a player who just makes the sort of movement that he does. Like, he's just always just making runs, and whether he receives the ball or not, he's an option. He's always wanting to get himself in a good position. That is really refreshing to see. And I mean, obviously that finish yesterday was absolutely unbelievable. And I think it took him maybe when he first came, it took him a while to get started. But now that he's playing regularly and he's scoring goals, he's getting involved in link-up play. I think we've got a very good asset on our hands, and I'm just hoping that we're able to turn this loan into a permanent deal at some point.
Yeah, and he's not just a striker, Michael. I think he's played up front quite a lot recently this season, and obviously, he's had the goal return to kind of back that up in the last few weeks, especially. But he can play on the left, he can play on the right, he can play up front, he can play centre. But it's not just in the final third where he offers something. There was a few times he picked the ball up in his own half and was so direct with the ball, just legged it up the pitch. I think there was one point where he kind of hurdled one of the challengers and then bent a shot towards the top corner. It was saved, but there's not many players we've had in the past few years that were capable of things like that. You look at Dayaku, who I think could become the player that will do that more often. Gooch, possibly in the earlier stages of our League One rotten tenure. But other than that, we haven't really had any players that would do that and get us up the pitch that quickly with, that much attack and threat, really.
Well, it's athleticism and pace, isn't it? And that's a lot of things that people go on about. Broadhead, as I think I've said this in the last couple of the previous podcast or whichever one it was, that he's just a classy footballer. For this level, he is a really classy footballer. But as I've said before, he finds pockets of space outside the box, in the final third, wherever it is. But he also but like you said, there was at least a couple of times yesterday where he got us up the pitch really, really well. And that in itself, as much as simple as it sounds, relieves pressure and relieves danger. And then it turns the tables back on Plymouth to make them shit themselves and make them have to defend, make them worry about what we're going to do, rather than us having to worry about the opposition. And as you said yourself, he's getting the goal returns. And we obviously got 2 in midweek, got 1 yesterday, got 1 against Cambridge. And the goals that he scored as well are good finishes as well. It's not like they're just tap-ins from 1 yard. They are literally good finishes, or he's heavily involved in good build-ups to other players scoring goals. So I touched on this in midweek, and I'll still reiterate it. If there's an opportunity to get him permanently, whether in January or in the summer, and hopefully if we don't get him in January permanently, if he stays till the end of the season, then hopefully in the summer we're having the conversation of let's get him permanently, because that likely means we've gone up.
Yeah. Well, despite going 2-0 up and probably having the chances to go maybe 4 or 5-0 up, Dayaku had a couple of chances that were saved. We've had one from Broadhead mentioned as well. Plymouth did equalise in the second half, Dylan, and
do you mean got one back?
Well, yeah, that's it's been a long day at work. Plymouth did get one back. Thankfully, didn't equalise at all in the game. But it is the one negative from the performance. I think it was a simple set piece, wasn't dealt with. Keeper didn't really cover him with glory in that one, and I think it was a free header at the end in the back post.
It was, but to be fair to Hoffman, the way the Plymouth conducted themselves for that set piece, he was crowded. Like there was nowhere for him to move.
Is that because of what people have seen from him, though? Plymouth will have done the research on Sunderland. There's been a few times we've mentioned that from crosses, Hoffman for as much as he's good at, his distribution is decent. He's a very good shot stopper, probably one of the best we've had in the league. He's not particularly demanding, and when he's coming for a cross, he doesn't always get there, or sometimes flaps at it. Is that the reason they've done that though?
Well, possibly, but obviously we're a League One team. Obviously, it is we could sign them from Bayern, but there's any keeper who's going to come in at League One level is going to have his weaknesses. That obviously appears to be Hoffman's, but I'm sure that both him and the staff are doing training and working hard to help him improve with that. But I mean, obviously, this might be a different conversation about if they ended up getting an equaliser, but thankfully it was just a consolation. So as long as it doesn't start impacting results, then hopefully it gets sorted before that becomes an issue.
Yeah, and obviously, but I think it was before that equalised, Michael. Gooch went off with an injury, and we changed formation, changed the way we were playing. I think we switched from a back five to a back four. It had a real impact on the way we played in the second half. We were getting deeper and deeper. I think for large parts in the first half, we were kind of 30 yards out was our starting defence line. We got deeper and deeper gradually in the second half, and Plymouth had 2, 3, maybe 4 very good chances to actually, get a goal, get a second goal in the first 10 minutes of that second half.
Yeah, and I think a part of that is down to the fact that I think we lost Winchester in midfield. I think Winchester going to right back, as much as I think he's done well at right back for the most part. Obviously, he's had his couple of shocking games, but I think in general he's the. I think I said this about Luke O'Nien before, but I think I'm starting to reevaluate and say that I think Winchester's actually better than O'Nien is in midfield. Obviously, we're not going to see O'Nien for at least a few months. But my point is that when Winchester went to right back and Embleton went into midfield, I think it was with Dan Neil, I think straight away we lost that tenacity and we lost that ability to just control and quietly dictate the midfield, which meant we got overrun, and then Plymouth were starting to find their opportunities at the start of the second half. And I think as well, the manager probably gave them a rollicking at half time. They probably said that Schumacher probably said to them, look, that performance was nowhere near good enough and not acceptable. But I think once we did ride out that storm earlier on in the second half, I think we did start to control things again. But I just think a large part of the fact why we lost control for that opening period of the second half is down to the fact Winchester wasn't there to sort of pick up the pieces in midfield and just get things going in our way again. And I think that's something hopefully in January that we can address.
Yeah. Well, it did finish 2-1, of course, Dylan, which is big 3 points. Takes us up to third, 2 points from top. Level games with Rotherham, I think, and 1 game played more than Wigan, who I think are level with us, I think.
Yeah, they are.
And obviously Wickham, and then Wickham are below us, level with points, but we've got 1 game extra to play than them. As an outsider, if you were to look at Twitter at times or wherever you're looking, you would not think that Sunderland were in this position based on some of the reactions and some of the words that get spoken, but we are still in a very good position. We've got a starting 11 out injured. You've got Burge out injured. You've got a full back line injured, Onai and Evans in midfield. Our injury XI would probably finish in the playoffs in this league. So the fact that we're 2 points from top halfway through the season with that many injuries, we've got a January window to come up. There's not really much to complain about, is there?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm going to be honest. Obviously, before the 5-0 and then watching the performance today, I was starting to worry that maybe we were going to be bound to a playoff spot because I haven't been able to watch some of the games. Obviously, I've been working, been at uni, but the ones that I have been able to watch, I went to Portsmouth, watched us get smashed.
Yeah.
Sheffield Wednesday, watched us get smashed, and I was starting to think maybe we were slowing down a bit, but hopefully it was just a blip. And as you said, once we get people start coming back from injury and whether they start having the squad depth, being able to come off the bench, hopefully we can keep this good run going. And because there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to beat every team in this division. I mean, you see Wigan, who are smashing on pretty much every team they play, and we beat them twice, like already this season, haven't we? Unless I've made that.
Yeah, we have once in the league, won the cup.
Exactly. So I mean, it's promising signs, especially obviously going into January in a couple of weeks. Hopefully, we can add accordingly and strengthen the side.
It'll go down as a very memorable game, that Wigan Cup game after we've won the Carabao Cup this season. Hopefully.
Oh, exactly.
But when you look at some of the players that we have got coming back, granted, not for a particularly long time with some of them, Michael. You've got Huggins, who's out till March, I think it is, but you've got Sirkin coming back, I think, in January. Shamali, who most people have probably forgotten about, to be honest, because I don't think he's made a league appearance for Sunderland yet, has he?
No, he hasn't. I think
But we've got so many players coming back, and you've got Denver Hume as well. You know, we're playing without a single fullback.
Well, exactly, and that's why for me, look, those who I think we obviously did this on the I think I said this on the Roke Report Twitter space. And by the way, well done to them for raising the amount of money they have done for the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. By the way, before I forget to mention it, but I think I said on there that I think Lee Johnson in a lot of ways has done really well because, and this kind of goes back to the recruitment in the summer when we've got it says a lot when we've got basically an injured 11 and yet we're still competing at the minute for top 2 in League One. And I know that a lot of people are disappointed with the bad run. And look, I mean, I wasn't as despondent after the Oxford draw because I think we have to accept Oxford are a decent side. We aren't going to win every home game, as disappointing as that was. But we followed that up with 2 wins and we're still competitive. We're still playing the way we want to play at the moment. So I think I've said it before. December for me is just get through with what we have, get through with the players we have missing. And then even with the players that, as you mentioned there, Huggins out till March, but you've got, Jamali could come back, Serkin could come back, McGeady and 09 obviously are a bit longer than that. We are missing some players who have been starting games for us and quite regularly starting games for us this season. Yeah. If that's any other team, you're going to feel the effects of it. As I mentioned, you look at Wigan, a couple of Wigan fans have said to me that they are really concerned that if they get a couple of injuries, then all of a sudden the outlook of their season could change. It says a lot for me about the recruitment in the summer. And hopefully this continues where we've got pretty much, again, a starting 11 out injured and we're still competitive. And we're more than competitive. We're taking the game to teams and we've done well recently.
Yeah. Well, we'll go into the part that everyone either hates or loves when they do it. I think it's normally quite a love after a win. But player ratings, Dylan, start with you. Hoffman, I went with a 7. Like I said, that you could possibly, it would be harsh, but you could possibly question them a little bit for their goal. But it's not necessarily a mistake. Made some important saves in the second half, and I think in the first half especially was a lot quicker off his line than he usually has been. But yeah, 7.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that. I thought when he, other than the goal, obviously, as I said, he was sort of not obstructed, but there was a lot of crowd in the box.
Yeah.
I don't want to give him too much stick for that, but he did. His distribution was good, and as you said, he made a few important saves. I do have to say though, I forgot who it was, but there was a chance towards the end, and we were just lucky that their player couldn't finish his tee because it was like a really good chance. I don't think Hoffman would have had it covered. He just skied it, thankfully. But other than that, yeah, no, that was it. I'd say 6 or a 7, but maybe 6.5. But yeah, I was impressed.
Yeah, Michael.
I'd probably go with a 6 personally, just because I've just seen the goal back as we're recording. Funny enough, I did think he maybe could have tried to claim it. I mean, maybe I'm being harsh there because there is literally probably about a dozen players in front of him for that goal, but I just think there was a couple of times he could have tried to collect the ball and could have commanded his line a little bit more. But otherwise, I did think he had an all right game. I still like Hoffman, but he is a young player, so I'm hoping he will improve.
Yeah, I'll go straight back to you, Michael, for Gooch. I'd probably go a 6. Unless he went off at half time, so that kind of players a role in it. Don't think he was as effective yesterday against Plymouth as he was against Mackem. His final pass wasn't as good as it was then, but didn't really do anything wrong. Wasn't the frustrating figure that he has been so many times this season. Just a kind of standard performance, really. 6 for me.
Well, it's a standard Lyndon Gooch thing, isn't it? It's Lyndon Gooch special. I think obviously first half, I think a couple of times he did skin their fullback once or twice, but again, he wasn't as effective. I didn't expect him to be because Gooch, unfortunately, doesn't have that consistency within his locker. But I would go with a 6 as well. I think he didn't do anything wrong. I think, but the fact of going off at half time, it did impact it a little bit, and because that then meant that Winchester had to go right back.
Yeah, Dylan.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. He was I'd say solid yet unspectacular. But that's just Gooch. Sometimes he has. Thankfully, he wasn't having one of his off days where he just loses his head, especially with it being quite a scrappy game. I think it's probably good he went off before it started, kicking off big style because he sort of player who would just go through someone with 2 feet and get himself sent off in that sort of atmosphere. But he did his job decently. But other than that, he didn't amaze us too much.
Yeah. I'm just looking at some of these ratings. I'm feeling they are quite high, but I'm going to stick with them just to see kind of what you say. Am I going to stick with them? I don't know. I'll say as we go on. Might make them up as I go on. Bailey Wright, Dylan. That's very good again yesterday. You know, I've never seen Bailey Wright so comfortable on the ball as he was at times yesterday, and against Morecambe. I didn't realise he actually had that kind of in his locker, but he did. Defended well. A couple of times he was possibly caught, like kind of ball watching a little bit, but recovered well, got the tackle in, got the block in, and got the ball away from danger. I don't know what rating to go with, to be honest. I'll say an 8.
Uh, yeah, I had him down for a 7. So, but, as you said, obviously he had quite a good game. It's nice to see, because I was worrying, uh, especially towards like sort of back end of last season when he wasn't performing as well as we know he can, that he was going to be simply good for playing in the back five, and other than that, be useless in the back two. But he did impress us a lot yesterday. And it's nice to see that he's looking more confident on the ball as he has than he has at some points. And I think it's something he must have been working on. And obviously Johnson trusts him because he had him as his captain at Bristol City. So hopefully he just keeps playing this way. We know we've got a solid defender who we can rely on.
Yeah, Michael.
7. I think he was very, very. I think he was obviously unspectacular going forward, but we didn't expect. But obviously, I'm not expecting him to be like that. But for the most part, defensively, I thought he held the back line together quite well. So it's unspectacular, but yeah, good standard 7.
Yeah. And then again, back to you, Michael Flanagan. Probably to go with a 7.
Yeah, pretty much a lot of the same stuff I said about Bailey Wright. To be fair, obviously a couple of times brought the ball out of defence really well. A couple of times just won some loose balls in our own defensive half really well, just to relieve a bit of pressure. But yeah, 7. Just again, steady, not spectacular.
Yeah, Dylan.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think he's very much improved this season. He's looking a lot less shaky. I mean, if I'd seen last season before, if I'd seen his name when I saw his name in the starting 11, I started panicking. But he's been very reliable. He does his job very well. And as I say,
I've seen a nickname thrown around from Titus Maldini, where he either plays like Titus Bramble or plays like Paolo Maldini. And I think recently, especially this season, he's definitely been more of a Maldini build, I would say.
No, that's fair. I've been donning him a Flanavaro recently because
Yeah.
some of his performances. So yeah, I'd agree with that. So yeah, I'd give him a 7 as well.
Yeah. And then back to you again, Dylan, for Doyle. Again, 7.
Yeah, well, so obviously he defended very well, and this is the sort of performance that we used to see from him now. He's especially for his age, so mature, so good on the ball, likes to bring it out, plays good passes to feet, and can ping the long balls as well. However, I bumped him up to an 8, simply getting an extra point just for the little shithousery with the linesman.
I was just about to say that would be
Yeah,
that,
about
wouldn't it?
that.
Yeah, he's got bonus points made for that. So the absolute top boy all around, and love him. Hope he can stay fit and stay performing well for the rest of the season now.
Hopefully so, Michael.
Oh, I was going to say 7, but because of that shit housery, I think that bumps it up to an 8. Like,
Yeah, yes.
I can't add to anything Dylan's just said. Just proper love shit housery.
Yeah. Dayaku, Michael. Probably his best game of the season. Best game of the Sunshine, best game of the season. Same thing, isn't it? But looked more of a threat, kept things simple. One thing that I know John said a few times, he doesn't beat his man enough. I thought he did that a lot in the first half. Obviously got himself the assist through doing that. Second half kind of backed off a little bit, and there's a few times he kind of just stood with his foot on the ball, I should say. That could have went nasty, that one. And could have done a little bit more with it. But overall, I think he was close to get a goal as well. I think one of his efforts went just wide. So I'd probably say 9 for Dayaku.
Debating between an 8 or a 9. I'm gonna end up contradicting myself with the ratings later, probably, but I don't care. I'll probably go with an 8, just because there was a couple of times where he didn't beat his man, and there was 1 or 2 times I think he got a little bit too bullied for me. However, I do agree that yesterday was his best performance. He basically continued where he left off against Morecambe, and the way he skinned his fullback for the second goal was beautiful. It was just delightful. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as well, I think it's one that, again, and I think I said this the other day as well, that he's one that hopefully will start improving the more he gets accustomed to this division and the physicality that's associated with this division. If he gets more used to being in this league as well, then I think we hopefully second half of the season will see a really good Dayaku, providing he stays fit. So yeah, but I agree with you. Yesterday was his best performance, certainly that he's played so far this season. And fair play to him, because I've criticised him quite a lot, and I think justifiably. But recently, if he shut me up, perfect. I want that to happen.
Yeah, and Dylan.
Yeah, I had him down for an 8 as well. I thought he was excellent, and I know, Mackem players doesn't get extra points on the board, but he did it about 5 times yesterday. And you just love to see it. I think he had the full back on toes for the majority of the game, and
He did, the first half he did especially. I think it was number 3 for Plymouth that he had the beating of every time, and I found it strange that he then swapped sides in the centre half and didn't really have much of an effect. I don't
yeah.
really know the thinking behind that.
I think he just prefers. I know he's quite versatile. He can play the side, but I think he was playing on his preferred side than the first half, where he's most comfortable. Maybe that's where he finds it easiest to express himself. But fair play to him. And obviously, I've seen him. I haven't seen many of his recent performances. Obviously, as I said, I've not been able to watch too many of the matches, but I've seen him get quite a bit of stick on Twitter, which I thought, oh, what's happening here? Because when I was watching him after he signed early on in the earlier games that he played, I thought he was quite promising. So it's nice to see that he's further than that and becoming quite an important player for us, clearly.
Yeah. Back to you again, Dylan, with Dan Neil. And I don't think this is really an exaggeration, possibly a little bit, but I am starting to think he's probably the best English midfielder that's ever played football. Might be a little bit of an exaggeration there, but he's definitely up there with the best. 8 out of 10, took his goal well, and somehow is getting better and better with every single game that he plays.
Yeah, I mean, he's just. I've got him down as an 8, but just on your comment there, I think it would be more fair to say that he's the best midfielder football has ever seen.
Yeah,
I just love. I saw him. He did it quite a few times yesterday. I love it when it's like long ball comes in and he brings it down as if someone's just like dropped a balloon at him from 1 foot away. It's absolutely nothing. He turns well. He sprays the ball about. Unbelievable. He's definitely our most important midfielder and has been for.
yeah.
Pretty much all season. It's great to see proper Sunderland lad absolutely tearing it up for the first team. And he's one of those ones who, when hopefully we climb back up the divisions in the coming years, he can take that journey with us. That's if he doesn't get poached by the team in the higher division sooner than that. Because it wouldn't surprise us if we start getting offers in really January in this for so hopefully we can keep hold of him. But I think obviously
he's a very humble player as well. I don't know if you watched his interview after the game, but he was saying, he's been fortunate with the interviews, and he hopes that he's still going to be part of the first team after the injuries come back. And I mean, if that's not the most humble comment any footballer's ever made, considering he's the best player on the pitch in most of the games he plays, I don't know what is.
He's unbelievable. He absolutely loves it and tell. I think if it's his choice, he'll be here. Hopefully, we just don't have. Thankfully, we don't have a Donald on the club still, who probably flog him for the nearest bit of money to try and save the club like he did with Manchester. But Daniel hopefully should be here for a very long time because he loves it and we love him. So why stop us?
What would be a reasonable bid for him to leave? 300 million?
No, someone like whoever wants him would have to literally like go to a different planet, find a way to like combust it down to a smaller size, then hand deliver it to Kirill. Like that's what we need. We need an entire planet. Like no amount of money is an acceptable figure. No, it's just he's priceless, man.
Yeah. Michael?
Don't listen. Anyone who's listening, don't listen to either of these. Daniel's a horrible midfielder. He's really horrendous. He's not worth anybody buying whatsoever. Just let him stay at Sunderland. We'll bear the bearing of him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's atrocious, really, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just clueless. Stop picking him up, man. People will take him away. I agree. For the most part, he does get better, and obviously that will happen even more across the season. For rating, I would give him an 8. I think he took his goal well. The one thing I would criticise, and it's a small thing, and it's something hopefully he will learn. One occasion in stoppage time, he was trying to take on 2 or 3 Plymouth players when you're 2-1 up and you're trying to see the game out. Yes, obviously you want to try and get a third, but at that point, keep possession. And he lost it, and I lost my shit with him. It's not against him particularly. I just hate stuff like that. It's terrible game management. Now, thankfully, we got away with it because he's God, so he's all right. But
very bold to be criticising the best footballer to ever live.
Yeah, of course. No, he's the worst man. Stop persuading people. Just took his goal. Seriously, though, took his goal well, and just hopefully and like Dylan said, hopefully he's part of the upward journey with us up through the league.
Hopefully so. Hopefully he's not playing League One next season because I can't bear the thought of that again. But anyway, we'll rattle through these last 4 pretty quickly because we are getting on for time. Winchester, Michael, 8.
Solid. I agree. Solid as ever. I think in midfield, really tenacious. Did a job at right back, but we missed him. For me, we missed him in midfield, which says how good he was in the first half.
Yeah, and Dylan?
Yeah, no, completely agree. I mean, every time he plays, does the exact same thing. He just runs about for 90 minutes, giving it his all. Goes for every second ball, wins it most of the time. Been very impressive this season, and it's quite clear to see why Johnson signed him now.
Yeah. Pritchard Dillon went with again an 8. Struggled when he first came, and there's, like I've said a few times now, there are multiple reasons for that. But he's very similar to Daniel. He's getting better and better with each game, and you can see why he was so highly rated in the Championship with his ability just to hold onto the ball despite being however tall he is. I think he's probably even shorter than Johnson, which takes some doing. But everything about him in the last few games has been unbelievable. So I'll say an 8.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. I had him down for an 8 as well. Obviously, I think he's similar to Broad and Dejan, who take a bit of time to settle in and get to playing the way that he knows he can. But he's been brilliant, especially yesterday. He was unbelievable. It's quite clear to see why he was rated so highly by the Tottenham fans when he was with them. And he's a championship footballer, like, and playing
Would be
big
very
clubs.
fitting if he gets the 94th minute win against Arsenal, wouldn't it?
It will be absolutely unbelievable. I'd expect like shirt off,
Yeah,
backflips into home stands, like, oh, unbelievable, man.
I'd love that. Hopefully that happens. Hopefully, Michael.
Yeah.
8. This guy has just keep this guy fit. He keeps getting better every week. Shows his quality really well. More times than not, when we try to attack, it came through him. So yeah, just make sure he doesn't get injured.
Yeah. Ross Stewart didn't get his goal, but as he always does, worked hard. And he's getting somewhat of a reputation with referees, and I don't know why, of going down very easily. He never does. If he goes down, it's probably going to be a foul unless they've won the ball. And like we've said earlier, I said we're not going to mention the referee again, but it definitely are. There was a few times now, I think there was one penalty shot on him as well that he's went down. Probably should have been a foul. And it just seems to be getting waved away most games nowadays, which is very strange. But anyway, 7 for me, Michael.
I'd say 7 for how he played in the game. About 100 for not losing his head at the referees.
Yeah, that does take some doing. Although, to be fair, a little tackle at his discretion wouldn't have done his rating any bad for me, but it did not happen. Not this time, anyway. Dylan?
Yeah, I know. Like, I would say 7 as well. I don't understand where this sort of myth with the referees comes from that he goes down easy. Like, if he was, like, realistically, to get him on the floor, you need to slide tackle him with a Boeing 747. So I don't get where the only time I've ever seen him go down when it wasn't an actual foul was that dive against MK Dons, like, earlier in the season, which I was a bit baffled by. But other than that, just he's getting fouled, and the referees just want paying out about it. But I mean, as long as they're still winning games and he's still doing the business, let's not let it be in a position where referees can impact the results of games. If we just say that, like,
Yeah.
don't even bother about what they're doing, what they're saying, because if we then go and sink 3 goals in the back of the net, it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah. Well, last player, Dylan. I said Daniel is the best footballer on the planet. If there's any other supporters listening, he's not, but for Sunderland fans, he is. I think it's fair to say the second best footballer on the planet is probably this guy, Nathan Broadhead. Got himself another goal. Nearly had a second one as well. Just, he's looking like a player that can do it all as well. So again, 9.
Yeah, I've put him down for a 9 as well. He's really coming into form now. He's showing us what he can do. And I mean, like, it was just the sheer the audacity to just back heel it in the far corner as if it was nothing. Like, he didn't even have to stretch out for it, man. It was great. And as we were saying, his movement and the way he just gets the ball and drives, it's something we've been lacking for quite a while. And it's clear to see why he's been so highly rated, why he was on the bench a few times at Everton at the start of the season.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping and praying that we can get him on a permanent, because if he's not playing for Sunderland Football Club next season in the Championship, hopefully, I think I'll cry. So that's all I'll say about him.
Could be European football as well next season.
Exactly. Well, when we inevitably win the League Cup, we can't be getting beat by Arsenal, because I live with 2 Arsenal fans and I've been giving it the big and saying that we're going to beat them. And quite frankly, I'm never going to hear the end of it if we get beat. So we're winning the cup is all I'm saying.
Yeah, hopefully so. Michael, last but not least.
9 as well. This guy is just the League One Sergio Aguero. Literally, he's just the quality he's got.
The Mackem Aguero.
The goal itself that he scored, I was really impressed with. They managed to nip away from his man at the back post and had a really cheeky finish as well. Just like I said many times, get this guy on a permanent, please. Just whatever it takes, Sunderland, do it.
Yeah. Man of the match, Dylan.
Oh, it's right. It's between Dan Bale and Nathan Broadhead, obviously, but seeing as though Broadhead scored the second, and that was inevitably the winner, I'm going to say give it to Broadhead because he was just unbelievable. But Dan Bale did the very, very close second.
Michael?
Nathan Broadhead any day for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. Next game is Saturday. I thought we had a game on Tuesday, but turns out we don't, which is quite sad, to be honest, because I like a good Tuesday game. But away to Ipswich on Saturday, not going to be an easy game, despite them being pretty poor so far this season. Obviously got rid of the manager in Paul Cook. I was going to say Steve Cook there. Who is Steve Cook? It's a Bournemouth defender, isn't it?
Yeah, he's the Bournemouth centre back. Apparently he's been...
I don't know why he came in my head. But it was Paul Cook that left, not Steve Cook. And I think they got a draw with Wigan,
they did,
I think
Wigan.
It was.
They drew away at Wigan.
So take from that what you will, but it's going to be a tough game regardless what happens in the fixtures building up to it. It always is, especially when Sunderland are away from home this season. They always seem to be more difficult than they should be. Hopefully a win, but whether you predict a win is now up to you, Michael.
Do you want me to go with my head or my heart?
Both. Half
head says 1-1. I think because we beat Plymouth, I think we can afford to at least not lose this game. But obviously, and my heart obviously would say 2-1. So it depends. If we turn up, then we've got every chance of beating them. But for me, I think Ipswich at Portman Road, I think it is going to be a tough game, as you said, despite their recent form. I think at home they've actually been much improved recently. So yeah, I'd probably say 1-1. But if you win, then it's a massive victory all the same.
Yeah, Dylan, last but not least.
I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna say that we're gonna beat them. I reckon we're gonna beat them 3-1. Obviously the 12th in the league. I'm looking at the recent results. Obviously the big 2-1, which is fair enough, but they lost 2-0 to Charlton, lost to Rotherham, who are obviously doing really well this season. But I mean, it shows that they're not there. It's there for the taking. Like, there's no reason why we should be losing to a team 12th in the league, and hopefully, obviously, when they rock about the day, we keep the same sort of tenacity and desire that we've been having the past few games. And I mean, if we rock up with the heads in the right space, then I think we'll easily beat them.
Yeah, well, hopefully so. But that is the time today. Appreciate you both on once again.
Thanks for having me on.
It's been an absolute pleasure to talk about another Sunderland win and another shit refereeing performance.
And long may this continue, apart from the shit referees.
Absolutely. Hopefully we never talk about that again, but inevitably we will.
We're going to, let's be honest. What are the odds are that we do that? Let's see, here's a challenge. Let's try and not talk about the referees on the podcast between now and the end of 2021, and we'll still probably fail that because they're so shocking.
Could change the drinking game up from the confidence word to the referee
word. I'm not recommending that drinking game again.
No.
I mean, as long as we're still winning games, if the referees want to be a bit naff, it gives us something to talk about, add some longevity in the podcast. So
to be fair.
As long as they're winning games for us, let them crack on.
For now, we'll let them off for now. But anyway, Sunday we'll be back to talk about the Ipswich game, which is hopefully another win, or at least not a defeat. I think is what most people would want. But until then, we'll see you later.
That's all, folks.